So before we begin, I'd first like to observe protocol. I'd like to recognize the presence of our dear distinguished guest. We have two members of parliament on the panel. We have Honorable Masika Apollo, the Honorable MP from Bubulo East, and Amisindwa. Honorable, you're most welcome. We also have Honorable Kainza Justin, who is the woman member of parliament for Bududa. Honorable, you're most welcome. We also have Honorable Jonathan Odur. He's not here. He's going to be joining us on Zoom link. He will be right behind there on the projector. He will be joining us on Zoom link. Also on the panel, we have Bruna Patricia, who is from the Justice Centers. You're most welcome. And we also have Amza Owamono from NGO Forum here with us. We have Chimule Mawazi from Namatala. And we have Nasinza Saida, also from Namatala. You're most welcome. They will be part of the discussions actively, but the rest of us will be actively also participating in this discussion. I would first like us to say a word of prayer as we begin this. So let us all humble ourselves and we say a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this morning. We thank you because you have enabled us to gather in this place. We pray that you protect us. You send your angels to minister to each one of us and keep us safe from all the pending problems. But Lord, despite of all this, we know we're going to have a successful discussion. In Jesus' name we pray. My apologies for the Muslims, but we all serve the same God. Salam alaikum. All right. Also, we need to sing the National Anthem. Oh, Uganda.
May God uphold thee. We lay our future in thy hand. United, free for liberty, together we'll always stand.
We could also sing the first stanza from the East African anthem.
Mungu twaomba uilinde Jumuiya Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu zote tuilinde, tuwajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu.
Thank you.
The target language is Luma Saba, so we are going to use more of Luma Saba. Hello.
Okay. So, with me here, I have Richard Boyo, who is going to give a brief about our discussions today in Lumasaba. All right, so as earlier, my name is John Paul Ejule. I just want to say something brief about who Wizards Foundation is and why we are here. Wizards Foundation is an NGO based in Kampala, but we do content production. We produce radio and television programs for media houses. So we partner with over 80 radio stations across the country. We also partner with some CBOs to produce content that leads to a positive social change. Wizards Foundation began in 2013, and we have been implementing several programs, mainly geared to community development. One of the programs we produce is called Our Parliament. Our Parliament is a program that is funded under the Democratic Governance Facility, and its main aim is to bridge the gap between the citizens and the members of parliament. The activities we conduct are radio programs. We have a radio program called Our Parliament, which is produced weekly, and this program is a civic education program that is aired in the 80 radio stations that I said earlier. We also produce a television program called Face the Citizens. Face the Citizens is a program that is focused on youth and getting their involvement in democratic and governance affairs. This program airs once every month on NBS TV. And another activity that we do is these town hall debates. The town hall debates, where we are, this is the 5th town hall debate we are conducting. We have so far done a town hall debate in Amuria, in Bundibujo, in Kalangala, in Lira, and now we are here in Mbale. The town hall debates are basically a program or an opportunity or a platform that is given to citizens and their local leaders to discuss an issue that is in the district. And we've discussed different issues in various town halls that we have conducted in the districts I've mentioned. Today we are here in Mbale, and what we are discussing is domestic violence, but mainly why it's increasing in the face of COVID-19. So we are here to interface with our leaders and to really get to the root of why there's an increase in domestic violence now that we are facing this pandemic that is affecting the whole world. Again, I want to thank you all for coming and being patient. I believe these discussions are going to be very fruitful, and I believe all of us are going to be very engaged until we reach a point where we come up with action points that Wizards will follow through to make sure we are just not talking, but whatever we decide from here, we then follow through with the right and relevant stakeholders to make sure a solution is derived. So thank you very much. I now give to my colleague Richard to introduce himself and also because we are going to use 2 languages. We're going to use English and we're going to use Lumasaba. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, khwabenyaire nabi kani mukhwinyaire khumukhwiyakhire khunyoerera bibero byekhutambisa mukhafiti nenga khunatimisaka hangu khubone khuli buli mundu yesana isa alisi mutsira bulayi khu program nga nili kuyandikisa era ali ejule Paul nga niye manager monitoring and evaluation wa Wizards Foundation wamaliyeho bakanikhayo ali khunerakho inganikha ingehe iye khwikulao olubusano luno ali khwirekho khurekeresakho bikehe biyambakana khubye khubusana khweffe ano khwirekho khurekerese Bruna Patricia khukwa Justice Center ngatsya khukanikhira khu civic education alinga khwamilao ibeo birebo bisi bunareba alinga khwamilao khurere abandu bakhali batwela ta alinga khwamila abwenao kane khurere ipano ya discussion namweta abandu babakhali batwela khulimo ni Bruna khulimo ni Amuza Wamono Esther Nakhayenze nga niye senior probation and we mu district ye manafa khutubakho ni Pastor Tenywa Livingstone nga niye executive director action against vulnerability khwabamo ni council Kabibi Sharifa khwamusirekereshe nesyo atwera ni Honorable Justin Khainza woman member of parliament wa Bududa district khutubakho ni Honorable Apollo Masika member of parliament wa Bubulo East mu district ye Namishindu alikane khwirekho khufukise babali khurekesa khu radio yino babenga nabo bareba birebo nga khwamila beremo birebe ebyo no ali khwakamise lubusano lwefe sikunatumisa munyanga tsibita ninasyo ndi khubakanisira birai khubarangirira khuli ni Emma Bwayo wa Elgon radio niyesi khunatya ninaye nga khukendisa iprogram yino
nasi maluka lumukosi bwayo sila indi fesi khuli babwayo nasena akanila mwesi mubene nga mwitsa khufurisa kumusi kwe shelelo khwisonesa makhafiti nga mukosi bwayo nalumile khutandikha ngemboka yatse neshikhasa khukanikha byesi abele khuplaningile khubona ndi fesi khutesela atula lunakhu lwe shelelo nilosila khumanyisa ndi byesi khusokana hano byosi bili live khu Elgon FM 101.4 unyala wabanga khurekeresa live khu www.elgonfm.co.ug khwandibenega khurekeresa mukosi ejule ne amalile khale khubona ndi akanikha sikhunakana khumalembuke ngali ta nakana mayi wefe mayi umusomi mayi Hayinza jasi akhabade kendule enyo ne bengo khwakanira abantu befa belosira khubanga nebetsa ne khukobola khukana hetsilo mutsinga leka khobusa mayi na khwakanira
wanyala nabi punyala khwa need to stand up okay khwasimile nabi isi barengarenge hebe kumuholoku era ba discussion isuli nayo kumusi kwesha lero kama sino Hayinza Justin mba home cherema ushe district ye Bududa kemirenga bino hubakanira mwesana mutsire hubanga mutu bana twera hukane hulomo iri mudiro iranga niyanjulibwe khwabone huri polisi yarusire report ihabagana humisango kiri omuli nambo mu Uganda kibero kumwaha kubirire 2019 ne partition lekira huli buchisu bamba kesa bari Mbale iri ni nambe ngali nabi iya domestic violence obahuta khwambagana mungo khwabandi ni cases teba bana bali huba defiled cases ta defilement rape mu region yefendi saba tsingali kale kira ingani hesha lero yitsire ibuchisu era khwabanga hulingo Mbale khubonenga khukani homu huwesa ni kama chesi alwanda government of course government kana hubonere kuba khuhala mu lukosi the constitution yefendi kire protecting abacherema protecting aba youth protecting abantu bosana ne hufurera huli hana ni bamai yoba risking ngali exposure yawe eringali kirobona times bias ndi bohonabi alwande ebacherema so kana hubone nga husinzira ku topic iri aho bari ne mubifuho bya corona ebi bye bulwale bwakwirewo babona bari cases tseri huyongera so nga hamani huli mu discussion nafe kana humanye kuwesa ni kamje singa barangira sibenye nengo participants kuboni shina kira shibere shiryo in fact ina iri nabya hubona huri mumbu kenes kubere mu lockdown mu corona babona huri cases tsotse yongere shina shireresh so ifenga government ukana bina of course report kwa kibone nendinga wetsirengo wafuna experience iri oba different regions iri unique ngawanyala wetsange Mbale kunyala kwaba one kwebira other factors aba in the play khubere mu season y'emalula ina de lockdown ebyabomu of course ni bulindi ngo ni bindi khubona khuri babana ari bali confined tsingo bali mehutse somero factors itsindingeto so kana khumanye nga government kuna eshihuna shingiro mu khuriena era niho bona khuri banu kamagambira kaliwo ka protectinga babanu khufura bahasini babana bali vulnerable nabi ni kuna kana khubone root cause ni khobolenga ho addressinga nga solutions tama kariefe ni of course ife holi sample khwama mu community ukana khobone mu community stefe shina shiyanga shiriwo kunyala khwaisa na matches shina khubona khuri chimisange chi reducinga especially buchisu khaba ni rating iri high rita kale mbaka ndamwesana era mirenga inga bino khukule workshop ino mwanya lokhutsa mube free who participatinga atwera funa atwera kama chesi kana yeta shisinza shefe mwanya la nabi.
Okay, mai wanyala ho benga ho pakela kama hayinza mungon. Okay. Nasima lokalika hobsa program ye ferme no hande berenga fana ho munu mutwera kwa mesi basale befeba with arts abenga ho bolera kubanga munasonywe into he masikine ziro maitso hevulai banga bakalinga babalangira okhwitsano banyina basi bafunimbuka kho kunyonyola sine chesi kunyera khwabanga khutesera atulata so inakana mundu busa mutwera khwama muizas preferable if we can get Mr. Kayonga a very quick one khubona engelisa nyera khuberekera mone kukabwa nyera waambira bwene khao khubona ndi basale befa bali ano niyo khubanga khurekeresa khu radio amanya sishene shiyo benenga shikhugata tulangolo beshelera
ya bebulebe khubasima ndilundi khulwe khwitsa lweshalero ne khufurisa enyo abali khurekeresa ale ibulafiyo khu radio yino sitsilirwa shelweshalero niwo khukana khubamanyisakho khubye bisayumba khukhwirosera mutsingo ni khufurisa mumbuka iya COVID-19 isi lockdown iberereo ne kani khunyoye khubakhebuse khuli khutsilia khu report ya police ye kumwiko kwebikano 2019 bali bisayumba byerosera lukali nabi ne ate che kumutambo chenyolikhana sili mu Elgon yaba niyo ifursamo bisayumba ate bo keserera nabi I district y'Embale nga niyo ifursamo bisayumba alikira khwireba bisayumba bino bitsawo biryena ali mumbuke ya COVID mukhebulira sibafukirisa abandu khukenda khukhwama ango ta abe babatira khwinyukha ango khutsa khuramba kumutikhi nyindi bakobola ango lobe bositsana baba ango babana ababa mu masomero babanga bali ango alinge khulikanikire khwesi batwera khubekhali balomba likira bisayumba byenyukha nabi mumbuka iye khwikhala ango mu lockdown lwe khubandi bandu balorerana nabi aliyo mukiramo kundu walumali utsefumbiro ali khulonderera utsewaina ali khulolelesa khandu khakekhari khamirakho khulomana ni bindi bikhali bitwera ta nenamanyire ndi ngani khuliyo bakali buli mundu wabonakho sisabone kila khwitsilano khupanisa ebyambaso nga bino Wizards Foundation ngani banywere khubasonzola ni khuliyo nilomo iyitsa buli sabit mu program isi khwatiyukha our parliament radio bakali khusinywa muchitekeresa ali ife khwatya mu parliament khutera khutya khulwe khabiri namweta alukani lwe khataru khwayenza bamemba ba parliament nambasa babiri khubekhale iburangirisi bano mubenga barekesa program tsese khukhola muno motsiri tsirano tsesaba mumuli ni rumasaba kalese nganiye urangirya rumasaba alinza mu parliament namweta alukani nabapira tsimu ni bindi khwapanisa ebyambaso ngebyo nabesi khwafuna tsakakhabi khubatwera nafwe khubakanikhayo nabo khubakanikhayo ta ainisho sikhurererano sinatse mubikali talwe khuba bino byositsana binetsira mukhupanisa bibyambaso bitya khukhwirakho.
Okay, na si maloka lumukosi bwayo wanyala khubona ndi walindile mbuka ngashesa abele ngesubira lukalikakho busa inakana nganakobolebweni khubakene bali bweni buli mundu berosere khumwanjula akhaba ni bakena abandi bakanibire khubebweni babire nga bakhwikhala mwebweni kho ifwe sisana khune losera khuba nga khukanikhira atwera maybe nga khali khutima khutandekha khukanikha tsilo motsefe tsingalika khobusa inakana khwakanira umukoko wefe Bruna Patricia okhwama mu Justice Center bifiti bikaleka khosini byesana nga khufunyakilamo ne khutandikhe khube nga khuyingira munganikha yefe kumusi kweshelero sinebilira khukhusya busa khuli live khusimyana ndwela khombakho tsine Elgon FM lukhamba lwe bamasaba akhabewe ne olukhurekeresa bulafuyo ikhwakanira musale wanyala lukalikakho busa khuba nga khurekeresa kamakono kesu khurekeresa kalo khwamila khu Mbale SS Multipurpose Hall ila tsilomo tsingali tsesi fwesi khuli khuba nga khutesera atwela. I want to welcome you Patricia, a very brief one on the pathways to legal remedies before we start our discussion.
Thank you, Emma. Wanyala, right? Yes. When he was mentioning my name, I hope this is okay. When he was mentioning my name, I can't get myself. It's okay? Okay, fine. I heard him speak in Lugisu, and all I could hear was Bruna Patricia. And in mine, I had it, yes, I have been mentioned, and I am supposed to make the presentation. And I was determined to say Wanyala, Emma, for that, yeah. My name is Bruna Patricia Acham, and I am the Center Manager for Justice Centers in Mbale. Briefly about Justice Centers, it is a government program under the Justice Law and Order sector with a mandate to offer free legal aid services to the vulnerable people, to the indigent people, and to the marginalized groups of people. When we talk about free legal aid services, we are looking at according persons an opportunity to access justice at no cost without having to spend any single penny save for their transport from wherever they are coming to the courts of law or to any other places. In this, we look at offering legal representation in the courts of law for matters that are in court. We also look at offering mediators when it comes to settling disputes out of court through mediation, through arbitration, or other alternative modes. We also ensure that we empower communities through such arrangements as these to ensure that these communities understand and know what their rights are. Because we believe that an empowered community is one that can demand for accountability from their leaders, one that can defend themselves, and one that can stand up against any form of abuse, regardless of the abusers or the perpetrators in question. Justice Centers in Mbale is specifically funded by the Democratic Governance Facility, and we directly serve 3 districts of Budaka, Sironko, and Mbale. Today I have here honorable members of parliament from Bududa and Namisindwa. And unfortunately, these areas do not benefit directly from our services. And because we are here, that is why we are praying that the government passes a legal aid law or policy to ensure that there is a free service that is funded by government to the indigent people, because not everyone can access justice. It is a cry of the people, but they cannot be able to afford legal representation in the courts of law and any other areas. Although we don't directly represent them, we handle their cases. We offer legal advisory support, and a few exceptional cases, we actually go to the courts of law to represent these persons in the different districts of Manafa, Bududa, Bulambuli, Palisa, so forth. I want to also thank Wizard Foundation for engaging us to offer this civic education to the participants or the members here. And my presentation will be a brief one, a pathway or legal remedies that are available to survivors or to victims of domestic violence. I prepared a PowerPoint presentation, but I will look through it and take us through. But briefly, I will be defining what falls under the brackets of domestic violence. Is anyone and everyone, any person who has faced any form of abuse, are they covered under that bracket? Or does domestic necessarily confine it to a husband and a wife? I will also look at the forms of violence, the different forms of violence, And then the laws that are applicable. What rights do you have, or which laws can you invoke to ensure that your rights are protected? And then finally, we shall look at the available remedies. Where do you go to when you experience this kind of violence? Which places do you run to first? Are there any available shelters in this particular region of Bugisu? And what are the roles of the different places that you may go to? We have different, either the local council courts, the courts of judicature, magistrates courts, or whichever. I request to sit down so that I can take us through. Now, domestic violence is something that we live with every single day of our lives. Just yesterday, I was watching the news, and it was on news that at least 38 girls are either raped or defiled on a daily basis. If that is on a daily basis, what is the statistics at the end of a year? And also, I was looking at the report and I saw that Mbale or Bugisu sub-region took the topmost position in SGBV, perpetration of sexual gender-based violence. And topping most was defilement cases and rape. These are things that are happening on a daily basis. And our sub-region happens to be the one that is topping the most. This is just sexual gender-based violence. It's just a form. Sexual abuse is a form of domestic violence. And I think it is very good that WIZAT brought us here to discuss, to unlearn practices and discuss ways forward that we can use to address these issues that are happening in our communities on a daily basis. And also that our honorable members of parliament are here, such that we can also discuss and identify any gaps of laws that they could advocate for amendment or advocate for policy formation that can address these issues. Now, when we talk about domestic violence, we're looking at any acts or forms of any acts or omissions by a perpetrator that may cause any harm, injury, or endanger the health, safety, or well-being of an individual, whether it is mental or physical, of another person who in this case is considered as a victim. It could also be harassment by coercing an individual to meet any unlawful demands for surrendering of either property or valuable security. Domestic violence. When we talk about domestic, what do we consider as a domestic relationship? We have the Domestic Violence Act of 2010 stipulates clearly which categories of people fall under this group and which categories of people can claim that they have been abused in that kind of mode. We are looking at a family relationship, a relationship between all members, a husband, a wife, and children in that bracket. And when we look at husband and wife, we're looking at members who are legally married or who are legally recognized and not necessarily cohabitees. Even we're also looking at the victim, a victim of domestic violence, who was formerly a domestic worker in a home. In this case, we are looking at persons like maids. Maids can actually be protected under this particular provision of the law. We also look at any persons who are related by consanguinity, affinity, or kinship. We're looking at cousins, grandparents, relatives of a similar relation. All these are covered under this relationship, domestic relationship. And then any other relationship that the court can define as a domestic mode. In this case, we look at persons who have stayed together for a long period of time, as in courts as a family. These are cohabitees that court will declare as persons who had such form of relationship as people who can benefit under this provision of the law, and they are considered to be in a domestic relationship. There are 4 different forms of domestic violence. There is physical violence. Under physical violence, we're looking at any act or conduct which causes bodily harm, pain, or danger to the life or limb. In this case, we look at issues like assaults, battery, where somebody physically inflicts injury on you. They beat you up and you sustain any form of injuries. And then we also have sexual abuse. These are any acts of a sexual nature that humiliates, degrades, violates the dignity of another person. And this is this takes the topmost mode of violence in Bugisu sub-region. These examples are rape. Rape is having sexual intercourse with an individual without their consent, forcing them into a sexual act. We also have gang rapes, defilement of girls and boys. Defilement falls for the category of children below the ages of 18 years. Any person that is forced into a sexual act, or even by consent, we say legally, we look at children as persons who cannot be able to consent. But many times people like to come to court and tell the court that, you know, this was my girlfriend. In our laws, that will still be an offense and it is a defilement, regardless of whether the parents married her off to you or forced her into a relationship that seemed like a marriage. That is still a form of abuse. There is incest, there is forced prostitution, sodomy or bestiality. Actually, sodomy is not, and bestiality. There is also corrective rape. Corrective rape is a form of forced sexual engagement without consent of an individual for purposes of eliminating or changing their behavior. This is usually common for persons, lesbians. You want the person to adopt the norm that we believe is normal of husband, man-woman relationship. But because this person is saying, for me, I best relate with a woman, you decide to rape her in order to correct the vice that she has. Emotional, verbal, psychological abuse. These are acts that cause to humiliate an individual. They cause emotional torture to a person. You either ridicule them, you name call them, you threaten them with the aim of causing emotional pain to them, or even any mode of silent treatment. You stay in the same place, but you do not want to communicate because you want to send a message to the other person. This one is usually done by women. They silent treat their husbands. Tebagala kwogera. Ndina okulaga nti nze ndi munyiivu nnyo, but in one way or the other, we are affecting the mindset of the other person. And then the final form is economic abuse. In this mode, you deny an individual economic or financial resources. Under economic abuse, in a family setting, there are resources that we are entitled to by virtue of being in a family. But there are perpetrators who choose to withhold everything to themselves without the benefit of the other. Or we deal with property without the consent of another person. Legally, when it comes to dealing of property or land, it is supposed to be by consent of a person's spouse. But what is the actual situation on ground? With due respect, the men tend to have decision-making powers without involving or consulting women. They deny women an opportunity to get engaged or involved in economic decision-making processes. Even when it comes to dealing with produce that has been done by women specifically, it is the men that make decisions or enjoy the financial output of these things that as a result of their hard work. Now, because violence is something that happens on a daily basis, we have laws that our country has ratified or has enacted to ensure that these forms of violence are either brought to book or they are specifically declared as an act of violence, and it also stipulates what remedies are available to victims of violence. And in any case, if there are any forms of punishments or if there are any forms of rehabilitation that are supposed to take place, what happens? So Uganda specifically has ratified the United Nations Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women. This is an international law that was ratified by Uganda. In this, it clearly spells out the rights of women and protects women against violence. Our dear Honorable, I heard her, I didn't understand the language, but at least I heard her talking about the Constitution of Uganda. And our Constitution protects all of us. It says that all parties are equal, regardless of sex. It does not promote the rights of one person and declare another person a third generation person. So the Constitution also makes provision for protection of rights of individuals, regardless of sex or status. Then the Domestic Violence Act, which came up to specify which of these acts amounts to domestic violence. Who can claim that they have been violated under this act, and who has the right or which authority has the power to listen to cases of domestic violence, and how can they be able to handle these cases? In any case, what remedies are available to victims of domestic violence? We have the Penal Code Act. This one clearly specifies, penalizes acts of sexual violence. It makes provision for offenses such as rape, offenses such as defilement. Then there is the Children's Act. One form of violence against children is inability of us parents to maintain them, to take care of them, to provide the simple basic necessities for children. It is a habit for parents to neglect children. So the Children's Act comes in to protect issues of all children in a marriage or in a family setting. And it clearly specifies on how these can be protected. There is the Female Genital Mutilation Act. There are some cultures in this country where they practice female mutilation is circumcision for women. Here in Bugisu, we have circumcision for men, but we have cultures amongst us that circumcise even the women. That is a mode of initiating them to adulthood. So the FGM Act is a law that is there to protect such girls and women. The Magistrates Act stipulates how the courts can come in to protect us against these acts of violence. The Local Council Courts Act provides for the authority of the local council courts in regard to such cases. So now we shall come to what remedies are available if a person undergoes such abuse, either physical abuse, emotional abuse. Where can you report to? Our first area of interface is the local council courts. The local council court, these are courts that are in remote areas. We have them in the villages. We have them in the divisions, in the different divisions where we come from. And it is composed of the executive council members or the executive committees in these particular villages. They have the mandate to hear complaints of domestic violence. When you report a case to the local council courts, you're supposed to take a statement of the victim. And within 48 hours, they are supposed to hear such cases. And as a mode of practice or a mode of policy, the local council court is supposed to be comprised of at least the quorum is 5 people in each court, and at least 2 of these people are women. And in this case, if the chairperson of that court is a male, the vice chairperson, who also performs duties as secretary, is a woman. So when the local council court hears cases of domestic violence, depending on the gravity of a case, by the way, because there are cases that are typically criminal in nature, matters like maintenance or child neglect can be handled by the local council courts, and they can dispense justice in those particular areas. And the remedies that are available in those courts, when they hear a case and pass a judgment against a perpetrator, the court may caution a perpetrator, may cause the perpetrator to apologize to the victim of violence, may order that person to offer a service, which is community service, it's a punishment, which is provided for by law, or even to pay a fine, which is not exceeding 500,000, to compensate the victim for any form of harm that the victim has suffered. And above all, in doing all this, they are aiming at reconciling parties. Because our law believes that living in harmony is usually the best mode. You talk to parties and ensure that at the end of it all, as you punish the perpetrator, you're also seeing to it that at the end of it all, they live in harmony, even after the hearings of these cases. When we say a caution, we are meaning to warn the person, to tell the person never to repeat that act again. An apology to the victim is to say, I am sorry for whatever I have done, and probably I will never do it again. Community service is, these are acts that they give you to either to sweep around the village courts, or they give you any place where you can continuously do work, slashing compounds of maybe the TABA officers, as they continue to supervise you to make sure that you change your behavior. Compensation for the injuries that you have sustained. So, aside from the local council court, which other place can you be able to go to? And what remedy is available? Is police, or to report to a police station, or to a police officer within the area of your locality. The role of the police will be one, to receive the complaint, to register it, and to investigate the case. We all know that cases by police, they are handled under the office of the DPP. By this, the police investigates the case and forwards the file to the office of the DPP. Once the case is sanctioned, the perpetrator will be arrested. And he will be tried or prosecuted in the courts of law. And once he is prosecuted and successfully, he shall be sentenced to imprisonment. The maximum sentence is 2 years, imprisonment for 2 years, or a fine of 960,000 shillings. But in addition to that punishment, the victim can still pray for compensation from the courts for injuries that they have sustained. But all this is dependent on the nature of violence. When it comes to sexual offenses, the penal code now takes place. I mean, the penal code is the one that is used to determine if it is a rape, If it is defilement, the maximum sentence is either death or life imprisonment, depending on the nature of the offense. And then the other available place where we can seek remedy is the Magistrates Court. Our court, there is a provision for a family and children's court. A family and children's court hears and receives complaints of domestic violence. Its aim is to ensure that individuals are protected. The family court can issue a protection order. This one, we usually run to it if somebody is facing physical violence and we have fear that the person, through this form of violence, the person is likely to lose their life. Or even not necessarily at the extreme end of losing their life, but we want to ensure that this person is protected. The court secures and ensures that they are safe from the perpetrator. So you go to the family court, or through an advocate or a legal aid service provider. You make an application to court for a protection order. It is the mandate or the responsibility of court to hear this case within 48 hours, because these are matters that are very serious, and any simple laxity may lead to death of an individual, because you can never know what is in the mind of a perpetrator. So when the court issues a protection order, what is the coverage of a protection order? One is to caution or to prohibit the perpetrator from committing any further acts of violence, to direct or to order the perpetrator to stay away from the premises or the place of the victim, to keep him far away, to tell him never go close to the home of sons, so maybe never go to Nambozo's home, or do not step foot in the home of Nambozo. You're keeping that person far away from the premises of the victim or the survivor. Also to prohibit the perpetrator from reaching to the workplace of the victim. Other areas that are available for us to go to are legal aid service providers. Legal aid service providers may come in to mediate cases of violence, depending on the circumstances. They will either mediate cases of violence, or they will refer the survivor or the victim to police for further management, or they will institute proceedings or a suit or an application for this person, seeking for a protection order, seeking for maintenance for children. Yes, so that is it majorly about domestic violence and remedies that are available. Now, as we know that many times seeking for these remedies sometimes may take a while, in as much as our policies are saying that within 48 hours, certain cases must be heard. Sometimes there are procedural gaps that may come in. In the meantime, as we have places that are called a shelter, a place, a home, a safe home for a survivor or for a victim, where you can be kept, they keep you in custody as they wait for the next processes to take place. Unfortunately, in Bugizi sub-region, we do not have a shelter. The closest shelter to us is in Tororo, and that is where we refer survivors or victims of domestic violence. This is a very big challenge and a very big gap in such cases of domestic violence. I thank you for listening. That is it in brief about domestic violence. It has not been a very, because of the limited time, I had to pick out just a few things that I could share with us. I thank you for listening, and I wish us successful, fruitful deliberations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We can give another round of applause. Amakulosera kuba ngakanikha luzungu ila wakanihile bikalika khubuse byesi naffe khunilosera khubunande khukanikhilakho amwalo kakhawo imbukeli khuba nga nitimaka nesi khunyala khwalekha busa ta isinywenywe muli khurekeresa khufurisa byesi khunila bano namanyende khubyesi Patricia elosile khuba nga akanikha unyala waba ngokana khureba maybe for purposes of clarity khunabona khuli khuwembuke fitiri wilosile khumureba akhuyilemo nekhutandikhe idiscussion yefe mumbuka ikhali yale ine khwakanila inerosela khusima khabewula fyole khusimya nandwela khombakho tsinel Gon FM nandi musale wanyala khusilosela fwesi khuchendela atwela era kamakono kano kali khubanga kama khu Mbale SS Multipurpose Hall khuli khulela tsilomo tsingaleka khubusa khufurisa bisayumba mutsingo ningeli sibilosile khubanga nibe khukosa bakeni basiliwo bakalika khobusa era nga namolomanga khali khukobola mukhutesa tsilomo tsingaleka khobusa ni bakeni befa bali bweni bandi abali mwinywe nakana kukabwayo abe ubukule kumuzindalo chenda khuba chini befe unyala banishire bakhore ba Patricia byesa amakholosera khubanga akanikha khunyowe khurusesha mwelilo nekhutane khukanikhila atwela
khanamba sendi bifursa luka bibukali mwabirekerese khurusakho isu khafunile khumanya urebe ngokana khureba
nasimile nabi iselufutu ngesili khureba ta isesa abekhe nombendi bakanikhile lulimi bamakhufuniaka ebindu bino mululimi luwanga manyile lulimi luwanga olu lukhululila ne balala sekhulung'ayila bulayi ate khwaluteselamu bulayi ta khali umukosi bwawe khuyetila khufuniakila mululimi lumasaba khutsila atwela wanyala
ali ngana khulwe khukana khuli khurambisa byombitsana television ni radio ali television nga khwakendile sibiyamba bulayi nabi ta nasyo ndi khulomba ululi hukaniha etse burangisa akanikhile khu mic
mwanyala nabi kutegeresa senangibwa Kanyerere Prudence chitebo change chili kuza esi Patricia aganikileko ngaloma ati mateka gayeda cohabitees angana kumanya baba yeda nga bamenyera adwe na myaka jenga particularly myaka jenga cheka abiri umutanyalaza ku polisi nga akugana buyedi probably rape ne bisera bisinga bugali polisi kiyeda batera kufugirisa inguzi umutaga naze andi kufunako buyedi ne batu bachikumanyada ignorance ngali mu batu bachikumanya yena yesi bazada so umutunga akasikane nga ku polisi akolatye
wanyana abi nanukundu wesirebo itsahwano papa you could move close here nga nali ukwitsa koti ya erosi sili chairman na me defense niyo wihase koti ya erosi ta kane khuba khusonzole
mwebale nnyo ngenda kukosa Luganda Madam Bruno webale nnyo kati mbadde embuuzo yogedde ku shelters ez'aba victim zifaana ziti ezo kubanga zirina okuba za mulembo nnyo nti city oba town tesobola kubeera nayo oba kugombolola kubanga abantu bano victims of domestic violence bafuna nnyo obulumi bungi nga basigadde mu bantu ababakosezaako oba nga basigadde ku kyalo so the aftermath of the abuse becomes very painful. Mentally baba tortured. The question is that are they very exotic that they cannot be raised anywhere?
Okay, thank you so much. Is there another person? Iliyo mundu kundi ngambaota okay yitse burangirisa babolendi koti siyikhasipa mundu mutwerata sili chairman sili defense oba nanuta ate koti yakhile khuikhasibwa kumusi mumbuka ye kumusi sili musiro abe mwakhapana siro erosi yakhabekhasa mukoti musiro ta.
Thank you. My name is Makawa Yakub. My concern goes to Madam Bruno you talked about domestic violence. Often we have witnessed, and I am a victim. I have my brother who is already in the cells in Maluku. I don't know whether your center also looks at violence against men. Because when you talk about domestic violence, you always intend to look at favoring women. Yet as men also, we are always violated by women in the homes. Two, in my understanding, sexual violence or harassment is also caused by women. But again, the law always tends to bend on one side at favoring ladies, because when somebody comes and is dressed in a, I don't know how I can explain, he's exposing everything and he arouses my feelings, I think I look at that as violating my sexual. Yeah, is there a way your organization also looks at helping men who are violated by sexually abused by ladies? Thank you.
Yeah, uwa kama yo mai tseno. Kana ali ukwitsa kana kutsenga kubahe busanenga hanyo ya rebe sirebuse.
Thank you so much. My concern goes to you, Madam. Has your organization taken a step of reaching out to schools? Because we have been able to go out to schools and you find gangs of kids, especially secondary schools. You find a gang saying virgin hunters, short skirts. They only look for girls to rape them along the road. Now, if we want to find out, have you reached out to schools to sensitize kids about it because they are not above the law and they are within the law? Have you taken that? Because it is a challenge for us who go out to schools to speak to these kids. And at the end of the day, we fail to help them or we don't understand the law. But if you are there already, we know how to help.
Yeah, thank you. To remind you, we are talking about domestic violence. Let's talk more about domestic violence. I know it's part of sexual violence. Mr. Wamono.
Thank you very much. My question goes, I think it will be concurrently handled by the legislators. We are privileged that they are now here, but also to Madam Patricia. We have schools, especially here in Mbale, or hostels. Let me talk in generalities. Hostels. They house our children, young girls, and we know them. But during evening hours, many of these younger ladies flood the city of Mbale. You find them at Nabua Road, you find them at Mbale Central, around the foods. But we also know that in Upland and here, cases have been told of how these same young girls that night, after exhuming alcohol and so forth, they bring in men whom we know also sometimes. And they have caused fights at night with their neighbors, listening, beating each other, fighting, really. I am now asking, as legislators and also as the implementers of the law, what can we do or what will you do? Because I suppose this same situation is happening in all urban centers in this country. And these outcries are eminent and loud. And I think there should be something to be done. So what have you done in order to curtail such prevalences, but also what do you hope to do to prevent such further comings?
Yeah. Ali bebulebe hurenyanga kwanikanire. Now we take you back to Bruna, and also the last person addressed himself to the honorable MPs. So, Mr. Boy.
I think umukosi wa yakona nyowani Bruna anyowa abenga yera kamubyesi bamakubanga bareba nimbo nengelisi kunyala kweta isi
mwanyala nabi era lumasaba izoke mwanyala nabi era kwa mahoro fitike huyongere hukanihanga huhanga hwihale na ari na ya Patricia aship renga herabire byesi hurebire papa abe nalombireni nyana brako ho briefly byesi akanihire mu lumasaba hushirinda nafako bero munishire onaribo masika kero mne abe sensa bire ni hubira kakomu kubanga walio basabire ba list hali hufunire presentation mu lumasaba balebe hushirinda lawyer hutegeka abere akaniha hu iromeri mudiro ibere ya domestic violence nera halo mari niye ngolobe yangire nabi ngabone kamawulire ngama bali bahana kataruna shinani buliro naho baba defiled cases are defilement ni rape kabina shinane bulu naho kala abonanga nego of course yabere general nga shi yangisa na mu Uganda most on a daily basis ne kale aetsanga alomari nenge bukiso nga mu Elgon ari cases angaba domestic violence iriwo nesambo ya rape ni defilement wamba babana bashiri hota kimyaha bashiri bali kimyaha kimi bashoza kuchimi koli 18 ene solanga defilement kakumukwano humwana oshiri hosa 18 eyaba defilement ni rape eyo munu 18 hutsa mungachi alomari ngebukiso cases tabere tsinga linabi era iniebere focus nabi nere yakubolerari ngali nambonga Uganda kuli kamagambira kalabera bra kamagambira keso kunyara kwarambisa ngensonga yakwiro magambira shina kaho protecting anga bana Uganda era so halo maringa Uganda kuli batwera hu subscribinga humagambira muna keshi bala shibu kabira kaira shibala mushibala shasa na kesi kama nambaka na ka subscribingo ho aringa alomirari walio liteka for instance ilo elimination of all forms of violence against women eri kama nambokenja urona kama bahasbani huwa protected mungeri ya brawa balinde mungu ya brawa na Uganda kwa signing ahulo mari wali constitution yefe ina iye mu Uganda nayo na ye hu protecting ya addressing tisamba na violence nga yabero ari ligambesi na government ndiramsa ya domestic violence hunirigambira liyambagana nabi particularly topic ye hubutabanguko musambo tsenja ulote sakani hiro nira kusonga akanihira mari butabanguko bunyana bwaba mungeri taburawa alo menyera hubanga rape hoka kumkwano nyera yaba gang rape banu bakali umuntu mutwera defilement njikani hiroho incest mubulebe balebe nabo kwegamba shabanga shirime shiralo ni forced prostitution kuforcing omuntu kutso kulisa banana purpose mbere namuna shiro miro hari babana bachenda shiro mu street safe hona bwani kwain kale musambe nenga yongera ho magambira alo bali gambira partially by Children's Act liyamba hungerisa abana ringo mwana ngabe abero defilement mwana bamukakiri ngahwatsire mu Children's Act gambira yamba kubaneri ba defining clearly shitegeza shiri defined era ningesonyera kwa approaching ngomu kwaba ni penal code iyambagana ni kimisango era fenga parliament abe huluha ko kuba ni ye na Patricia what parliament also working on the sexual offences law wanted to have a one-stop center for all the sexual offences nga parliament huluha ko bona hori horede na sexual offences shibe muri na iri twera igambya ari twera raba ari boneswa amahukanihirano Patricia amahubanga highlightinga Female Genital Mutilation Act hasa Magistrates Act kama gambira kenjaulo arifa kakane hungakana hubone huri bulishiro moshiyambagana hu domestic violence hu kabasanya bana ni bandi hube busamushitabo shitwera ngabe we kulori wali kulori nabona defilement nabo mu wanga we kulori nabona rape na inaba defined so nga parliament for who working atu azobona kuba niteka litwera na ratwera bini byosi sana kama gambira kano kafuga rape defilement musambe yeyo kwena huriketa atwera kashe sabaka niyo so Patricia Lomari na haringa wabere victim ngo muntu bamudefiringire umuntu bamu abusing sexual utimira kwe arawo niye saberenga aho biraka kiro munga alomari ipoint abenji bole ba local council courts era ensibe niye system ye ba LC huli hobushiho alomara hobushiho abe huli hobantu baran court local council court hobantu baran ane babiri bani huba bacherema ari ngabe chairperson abero omusani tegezo umumiyo hawewe ani hubo omucherema kale hokana bachema no baba hole hobana abanyabanda sanga tsingeri nazo bi chimisangechi through experience obani ibirhuse abanyabagaidi honga kufuranga abana bahana nyama amwira mu panel ho basani bonyeneta nenga ligamba lo mara hisi ho 2/3 baye bana bacherema iralo mari faina umunasura mitwala 5 ngabe basire mu local council courts kala kani honi ikoti ya magistrate niyesa kani hiro hari nga shaitirire nabi kwa nyamba shaba contained ho family huna local council level ubayero si koti ya bayero si ngabona ho bula mu muntu uri mu question ate by the ho bo musani ho bo muhasi yaho ndi focusing nabi ho bahasi but can also be a man ali ngabona ho ashino shaitirire shegeza kunyara kwata waita muna mu level ya magistrate ali mwenomo isalo mirari ngo victim imtsongeri mbinabi banyara bafuna but protection order niyo iba iri ni hulinda kana wohoga na mukarumu bukwaguliso bubo nga victim abona so muntu yamberero mu binabi hari mu mushingira abo hataye ari mukarumu banya bakoshoninga harimo hori ngo mukeremo wabiri ba ikoti ya haro yaromere aho amasharero bamumbukana burebe uhazashimi n'umuntu mukeremo yita kubanga uri umuharasinga ubani papo yita urre uhatengo wabwe ubengwese bimumenya yabari keep off the home banyamba uhaza ho muri misa amenyata kubanga nyara watsendi warera kamaya so ari na protection order bo mubukwagurizo nenga aiminga ho protecting omuntu tire huwaba ngaye uri habula mu bwewe buli mu matyabaga era alomari awe nawo isunyara hwabanga nawo kutsa of course alomha legal aid services nga wali abantu baringa nibo banyabaho guidance banya useyongo ni kumusango ko baho guiding ho arahusire mitendere na chini na chiri ne alomari nga parliament basaba barukana kubirise legal aid law kwanga ari bantu cyese bahora nabo bahoranga cyana chewa busa but of course bishishikana ho facilitation ni cyaro minari government parliament huire serious diteka legal aid ngaba habise diteka legal aid kitegeza shiri nga government nga budgetinga hunuboni ha pesa side hata muri legal aid baka different firms ubanga specifically babayeto abantu bahenyala ari minari indigents abantu bali ngefune rimenda ita so alomari ngabe ukale for legislators ba members ba parliament ngahola dali tekeri ikana hwali yangu so that habo honi funding budgeting itsa legal aid niyo babihola and of course ndiyo siba yetoho ngachana chewa neshiri babola abantu bafiti atenga abantu bakali mu community staff babira mu sambe fane riri hukabasanya ni bani kimisango kino batulugunyiziba so abe government yari kama pesa kuna ho expanding ho na ibesi hubonanga abantu ba approachinga election afukona shiranga ba members ba parliament ubone huri kushangwisa shisembe akani ho bari ku shelters wasingo singo tesi baro tsingeti baronga abantu babere ni bwanga mutsingo tsabwe baso haba kula victim ngo omusanu uyu abatsa bamubiho mungomo abira through counseling kwegambe mbere shiterero obanga mai ne barumbisa bubi nabi ne bamubiho ne halo marishe kumutambe imbali Elgon region soloni ha shelter ubahayo hese banyara hwaire babanu baba so habalinda kilo heyo niyo basorting embera bashiba counselinga era bashi arbitratinga ni okay ba victim bana iba isbahamba gane tanga mungo bangonda takala ari abo na ari shelter region iri tororo era nibonga baramba barifaring etororo cases tifana tsiringa abantu babetsire era we nawe namukobesera hazindalo abenga atandihira all papore birari shelter ifanere so Patricia, I'm now handing over to you. Okay.
Thank you, Honorable. And thank you to all of us for the questions that you've asked. The first question was in regard to provision for cohabitees. And I believe the question was asking that after how long is a person recognized, right, as a married after cohabiting? Is that right? Now, when I was talking about provisions or which relationships are considered to be domestic, I made it clear that a family or a husband and wife who are legally recognized. A cohabitation is not a form of marriage according to our laws. Regardless of how long you stay with your partner, boyfriend, even if you have 10, 15 children, that will never be a husband according to the law, that will never be your wife. that will continue to be a cohabitee, okay? Legally married, we are looking at people who have performed a customary marriage. By customary, we mean you husband and you the wife have fulfilled the custom of bride price. You have paid bride price. I believe that's the culture almost everywhere in Uganda, that before a person is pronounced your wife, you take dowry to the family of the woman, and then they will hand you over your wife and say that this is your wife, thank you for bringing whatever bride price you have brought. The second form is Mohammedan. That is the marriage in the Islamic faith, which is performed by the Qadi. The third form is a civil marriage, which is performed by the Registrar of Marriages. The fourth form is a church marriage, where the woman puts on, okay, you go to church and you get married. And it must be a marriage in a church that is recognized by law, because we have churches that are coming up everywhere, and these churches are not licensed to perform marriages. So it must be a marriage that is recognized by law. Now, as to whether 5 years in marriage, in a relationship that seems like a marriage amounts to a marriage, does not. The law does not make provision for cohabitation as a form of marriage. However, in the Domestic Violence Act, definition of domestic relationships, in addition to a victim being married, relationship of consanguinity, cousins and what, there is also provision for where the victim and the perpetrator shared the same residence. They stayed together in the same home. So these cohabitees can fall in that provision of shared the same they stayed together in the same home, and you can seek for protection under that provision, but not as a spouse because you have cohabited with somebody. I hope that is clear. Then there was somebody inquiring about the composition of a shelter. Now, a shelter, I believe she explained it to us. I heard her saying,
yes, I was just handing it back to you.
Now, in a shelter, this is a safe place. Security-wise, it is not open to the public. It is only and only for survivors and counselors, psychosocial counselors, people who are giving support to the survivors of this person. So it must be an area that is conducive for the survivors. It is a let me say, a building, a home in a safe place where we do not expect, it is not exposed to the public that they can easily come and attack at any one time. The security is at maximum to ensure that these people are protected. There is provision of clean water, the normal things that are expected in a clean environment. And it is a serene environment that can offer good, a good stay for the survivor as she continues to receive support from the psychosocial counselors and all the others. Why do we need a shelter? Is because victims, legally we call them victims, and in any other medically and what they are called, survivors of violence. These are people who they have gone through traumatizing situations. Just of recent, we handled a case where a boy, I heard somebody saying that domestic violence seems to be targeting, it is leaning towards only the women. No, that is not the case. We had a case where a boy had been defiled by a biological father. And it was the mother of the boy that was reporting this case to us. And he was in very bad shape. The survivor was in very bad shape. Now the question was, we are people in society. When such a person is sent back home to stay with the perpetrator, what do you expect? Don't you think that there will be interference in the case? So that is why we need shelters to ensure that the victim or whoever is in contact with this particular survivor, in this case the child was young, is in a safe place that they cannot be influenced or even beaten up by the society. In Sironko, just of recent, there is a woman who reported a case of defilement of her 8-month-old child by the father of the child. I think he was either drunk or something of the sort. She reported, she was crying at that time. 2 weeks after, we sent her back home, unfortunately. 2 weeks after, she came back. She's no longer interested in the case. Why? The society around her. And incidentally, the LC1 and the mother of this child were together. Why? There is interference. The family of the man is saying, our son is going to... So that is why we need a shelter, and it has to be safe that no one can access it except for those people who have good intentions towards the victims or survivors. As to whether domestic violence is geared towards only women, no, it is not. The provisions of the law cover every person. It is irrespective of your sex, whether you're a man or a woman. It is true that there are men who are also violated, they are battered. We are now registering increasing cases of violence against men. And who are the perpetrators in this case? It is the women. They are spouses. We have scenarios of such in Budaka. Unfortunately, many times, male survivors of violence are less willing to report cases, either because of the cultural belief that a man is superior to a woman. Which kind of man is this who is battered or who experiences violence, whether emotional, physical, by the woman? But it is true that we do not gear towards only the females or the women. We make coverage for all, and we are here to advocate for protection against abuse or against violence for all parties, for all people, regardless of the... If you're to look at our laws now in regard to sexual offenses, it does not narrow itself only to a girl child. It also includes the boys, because it is true. In as much as we have not yet seen a scenario of rape, but scenarios of defilement, we have male children who are defiled. And there are people who are in this prison here, Maluku prison, because of defilement of male children. In this case, would we still say that the law is geared towards only the female or the girl child or the woman? It is not. It covers all. And so if we have any people in our society, any men in our society who are facing violence, encourage them to come up to report cases either to the LC, to police, to practitioners, medical practitioners, to court, or even to the legal aid service providers, or even our office. We shall be willing to give support or to help that person. In respect to school outreaches and children, hostels and what, as a mode of creating awareness and empowering communities, Justice Centers conduct school outreaches. We conduct school programs where we go to different schools and sensitize children on emerging issues. Specifically, Mbale has been here Justice Centers Mbale has been in operation for 2 years. We opened offices on the 1st of August 2018. And at the time that we came, we realized that there was an increase in commission of offenses by children or by juveniles. And the belief was that children the law does not cater for them. They can never be in conflict with the law, yet the position is different. So we reached out to sensitize them on the provisions of the law and to tell them that criminal liability starts at the age of 12 years. So if you're found in conflict with the law at the age of 12 and above, you will be imprisoned or you will be punished in whichever mode. So in response to children in hostels, these need to be sensitized, but it also comes back to us as parents of these children. We have responsibilities as parents to ensure that our children are in safe places and that these places have policies that can curb certain vices that seem to be cropping up. So it is a responsibility for all in as much as we say government takes up the upper arm, even us as parents, even us as local leaders, even us as administrative officers in schools, we must make sure that these children observe the law and are protected within the ambit of the law. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Bruno. Hahumupela habalebe mohon. Namajendi birebo bisilio bikali ne ibweni kahoyo kuna frauli nimboke fiti receive kuna ba ngafwesi kukandikira atwira waliwo shirebo shesi amuza akanile baba habefe babenga bashira I think honorable masika unabango yeta I think wanyole kuma inyo ingobolesi honorable masika munye mwiremo shesi amuza akanile kumanya kubone hule kutsa ku second last session ife angolo beshelera
ngabe na recordingire bulayi wanyala amuzarebire hushe hostels abera reba ari hostel ari kale kubona nga angolo babana bakona mu hostels betaka ho street ari bachende inine ihuna boy nenga shesimbone mu hostels na seshiso hena sabeni ikana yabo sensitization ye babana wabo honingeri iskubolerera neshe habiri hezo nifune question nchifune bulayi neshe habiri okuongereroho kama somero ikana basali nga Patricia na mahuloma basali ni nafenga ni somero hostels no tsaba ni strict rules kama somero ka taking over hostels na aba under strict rules if it's prep time but how prep ngalanche like tsaba taken over by schools so that okay angaba sana chewa ne even bano bali who hosting abana bano na be ni strict rules maybe shina shahu yeto kubonanga abana bano baba ma streets ba focusing ushaba ile somero shesi mbono mu hostels.
Okay, nasima lokale kule hobosani dakika kama humika abili kubona kuri ku tsamunga na haye fair fit ka hobosari then hobe nga ni wrapping up inga ni haye fair kumusukune honorable masikaswaka na hewe tawe nakana uyole hurekere sebula fyo ni basale befe bali muno manye bafuneza baso yo ingelisiwe ufumo ilo muye bisa yumba mutsingo
holo iye bisa yumba mutsingo ese sili alende yino responsibility yefe ye basale okhwamela alunyoa holo hoba kuli ni lomo mulufungiro meli subconscious oba conscious ni subconscious umuntu yesinga ali mu bwongo ngatsoa ali ni kamachesi keswera mwa kali sino sibi oba sino sirai ibindu bibiri khukendelamo kale nga khwamile ale ingo babana bano hole hoba nakenda khumibala ibindi nabona nga babandu batsoesa abana babwe nga babaramo tsisambo nga wasomesera omwana sisindu asiyambile elala khukhwama bubwana paka mu bukhulu hole hoba mind yewe eli empty nga atandikha khumanya ngenyuba asali mu bamunzu mwakhamwa separatinga sisenge sya abana bakhana ni basoroli oba ni sitimbu sitsikona tsyakhuba lubeka lundi busa kale nanywe simukona mwakhamwaba muli andwale yekho ni babana nenga mubanya muli in touch with them if anything happens obanga wabolilekho kale problem itandikhila abwenawo nga wasomesera omwana siwifula tsingongo omwana wakhulolelele siwamba sukali waramuna oba kamalesi wakanywa wakabikhambi ng'omwana wawoleleta khuli khuba ngorora umwana naye anakanywa overdosing afwe kale bibindu bya domestic violence munzu nga papa ame wanywele alomana ni mayi ekhala aloma paka bwasi umwana arekelesa babana bosi barekelesa kale nga batsoilewo basoma domestic violence syabatsoelamo nabo nga bamilewo nga batse khukhola tsingo tsyabwe nabo batandikha khulomana kale khwafuna solution kamasuswa kekhurusawo bibindu bino nga khwamilala mutsingo nabo omusanyufu nabi lunakhulonga president alomare onafunira buli tsingo ifune iradio ni bibyalo ifune television kale benga khwabirire khuno nga khusomesa babana befwe khukhwama nga bama khwama munasare basoma kamateka babasomesa bulayi bibindu bya domestic violence papa akhalomana ni mayi ng'omwana abona ta khwabichungilala khwama bwana kane kamateka kano sengane kabe kamarafu nabita nekasa khurawo kamateka kane mwiyongere khufuna inmates all the time nga simwabasomesa khwamenya mwata wakhawachwari nge problem ngesilinyana oba nga siyatswata nokhwabona khuli ibweni kamabusu kanya kakhendela babandu babahaketsemo violators nekasa khulekha busa akari ano khwebula khurawo kamateka mu parliament kamarafu kamene abe wakharawo kamarafu kano omuntu onakise era uyongere nga kufuna babandu abatya against the rules of the society kale nolwekyo khwabona khuri babana befwe khubatandikhanga basili khwababolera kamateeka tsiredio tsababolera tsitelevision tsababolera ali nga watsoelewolera agariyo kasona kalite kamanyali ikhabwe for life oba kimiyakha abili abone iwewe obwebe kimiyakha abili instead of working in your garden instead of doing work for your prosperity kale amwene abone enjawulo abona ali sikhola sino ta nenakhanakhola sino niyo society yefu ebe healthy khufune development
Jesi buli munalo khubanga niyereba bali rosire khubanga yerulohira nabika imisango kyo khukulohira babana befe manye wambasa sino khashamira khufuzi
ndum kwekamba isalirwa nabi khulwe khuba nabonekho nga nawo lyanyuma amakhuba kumwakhasina yabawo celebration ye khuselebratinga AIDS day lunakhu lwa silimu lwabemanafu khulwe khuba khuba niyabo bakhuratinga ngefe khuli ni silimu umukali nabi khulwa sina nga wekhengile khwalola enyuma efwe bakisu abekalu kya yefwe yembalu nga khwasomisira abana befwe indayi nabi nya yakhufunisa neyari khwamile alanga khukhina embalu khuloma tsilomo tsye bubwoni nga beka masayansi ne bakhola ne baloma tsye bubwoni abana barekelesile uli khwitsa khumbalu baloma tsye bubwoni tsimbi tsinyene abana nabo bongilekho basoma ingeli yekhukhinamo khadodi iba leadinga to the left hand side kale khwabanga khutsoyisana iproblem yeyo mufa bene wamala okhukira khwatanda khulira kana khuri babana bali khwefuna tsinda nga basili nefe songa fa bene khubasomisa kana nolekyo imbalu yefe nafe khwaking'onamo khwabona khuli sikhuloma tsilomo tsye bubwoni khwakhola ebindu bye bubwoni khwama khumbalu ngewosena misindwa sikhanikiza bana misindwa khwatsia khusindisa banga bali inemba khukhwalula babana nga watile bemba bye bubwoni bokesa private parts bakhola bariyena kwekamba ebyo byosi bilidinga in our future oba bisera byefwe bye mumoni khuwonakisa abana befwe ate nikhweyongera ni culture irera kimisango irera ni ibindu bikhali bitufu
nabagesima locally inakana khafita hata khukobala hesi mai khayinza khusinzira khubyesi mai Bruno abelenga na kanikha limirari barangirisi befu kyalo bakhuyeta khona boshikali khubona bari ukhendesa tsindabala tsesi khuli khuba nga khuloma khobe wambasa burangirisi bwefe bwe khubyalo bali ni kamani kamala khukhuyeta khumala wotsilomo tsesi khuli khuloma
na husoha na Local Council Courts Act walio ligambira liriwo li empowering local council courts so legally ligambira liriwo khubona khuri courts zotsihala tibenga tsishenga misango chenjawulo khushalo ne papa mahureba capacity maybe shesimbono mini khuramba mmilimu chabwe echi khuliseninga ku cases tsino ikana yabo engerisi bambagana bulayi ni basali at times koloma khuri nga ikesi yabero ngere mungo omwana usawunya iwe nyolori babandi bakana bakipinge off bakana makwegamba bakanya khulomeriwo babanga bachanjula mukoti tsita sese bodanga ligali liteka lifuchirisa ne mu society nayo ini hubilivingira mu court tsino niyo yati wakamani yaboza hunyola arahundi itimpange chindi bachikipinga ofungwa cha defilement ichi wenyolanga basali bola hunu bareyo ni otherwise liteka libafuchirisa ne social basali ba victims ufranga bikesi ba victims baba bana ikana bameyo obani victim uberongo hasibona babilivinga na mu system ya local council so bani huchwa confidence niyo babanga banyala ba handling
okay nasi maloka lege hali khukobole na kanendera mukosa muzafiti busare amuza ali executive director wa Bugisu NGO Forum inakano mukosi wayo obengo wambira khwabwene khao naye abenga khunyonyola manya niye sachendelayo lwashina bisayimba mutsingo birosero khubanga binine nabi mumbuka iya covid
ya umukosi amuza iwe executive director wa NGO wa Bugisu NGO Forum manyenywe nga forum ya Bugisu NGO mwakholile osinana namwe mubona muriena mukaniha muriena khulomo yino yitsawe mikhekwana
nasimile mabi honorable members of parliament also appreciate and thank Patricia, then of course the organizers, and our guarant participants. My name is Hamza Wamono. I am the Executive Director of Bugiswe NGO Forum, but I also do research, and I'm a lead researcher for Advocates Coalition for Development and Environment in Mbale District and Bududa. This is why actually I am here, because part of the research works that I do has exposed me to some of the unforetelling stories that perhaps can also build a nexus between the work that Wizards Foundation is doing and what we are discussing now. Now, in regard, I think, I don't know whether I'm being impartial enough for everybody here, because I ought to have spoken in Iruma Saba, but then I realized then there are also other translations that are ongoing. So let me ask the audience, are you comfortable with me speaking Iruma Saba or Uganda or mixing? Okay. Iruma Saba. Okay. Now, Seshi Nakaniha is that only in this COVID period, in this lockdown, so many things have happened in our homes, and I can also send yes kwamira bulu uli hano yesizana afunire ko buzibu mu family yewe buzibu nyaba lusi wakulwana. You may not have fought, you may not have beaten or been beaten, but also the situation that has boiled in our homes in this lockdown has exposed us kumbera iretere discussion ifanikananga. Now, we have had cases because of the economic strife, the economic situations that have boiled, that have crippled our homesteads for the last 6 months. Kwezire kwabone nti abantu balwanire, abantu bafumane bakubanire. Many people have threatened divorce, and others have actually divorced as a result of that. Now, where I have been moving around all these periods, I can give you cases like 3, 4, but I'm also confident enough that within us or amongst us, there will be those who will give the same justifications. But now, the 3 that I have, there was a case in Busoba. The Busoba case, I think it was live, and the public, everybody, I think, could have gotten access over it. Until aba omuntu azokwiba, because imberanga yabere nano inzibu. So baba tulanze waza kuyiga. Nemukuyiga kwesa yiga bubi. Aza kukwiba, perhaps, I don't know whether that act was good or bad, but under the laws of this country it was bad. But for his family to survive, I don't know. Maybe that could have motivated him. Now, what he did, he went and stole somebody's property. I think somewhere in Nabumali. Then abantu bamulonderera bamudyanga zirenge iwewe busobengo. Then what happened was that umukasi alumat no, at this husband of mine has been surely he has been a good man, although the society or the community said no, he has been a thief even before what? COVID. But now, since we have got him, we are ready-handed, he has stolen, he has kept things here in the home, so let's now ban him. And indeed, they banned him to death. I think I can also point out to Emma as a journalist. I remember seeing his posts also on social media. Now, you see, we're talking about domestic violence being caused by maybe economic anguish, maybe the livelihoods that we have actually experienced mu mbeera y'esukama kwame ya covid ino na zaaleeteremu embeera ekalina indaida. Perhaps to me, the family saying no, this man is a good man. But also when they asked the children said no. For baba ibere kalu muntu munanu umulaida. Now you can see such. Now another issue was, I think, in Bukasacha. And in Bukasacha there was a lady who actually divorced because of the economic problems or situations. My baba was not providing enough for the family. Now, this was actually a unique situation. There were three things involved. There was both sexual violence, economic, and also physical. Now, this family, Vama side is Zabanyanya Echin, bordering Butaleja and Mbale. Now, the man was not providing enough for his family. Of course, Umukasinia may not appreciate inti imbere nanu. Ni alikusaba jumbu, alikusaba sukali, alikusaba buto, akusaba lusi chekulya chosi, but the man was economically incapacitated. He couldn't provide all that at the same time. Then, as a result, Mukasina iwafu na busungu. Now, the most interesting bit of it, we are talking about things that happen in our realities, although for us, sometimes by the issue that has remained in this country is that these are things that happen in our lives, but normally, few of them come out to public. Hatu mukasi ngali malire alibono museza aliku providing. Museza na I think afuna feelings, sexual feelings. Then he wanted to have sexual intercourse with the wife. The wife said, since morning, I've also been requesting you to provide the following, but you have not provided any. Now again for you, you want me also to provide myself for you, and yet you have not provided anything since morning for me of all what I have asked for you. Now, of course, normally, naturally, a man, I don't know whether it is ego, pride, or whatever language you can use, they tend, for us, Abijala Adamzi, the wife to the second US president, remarked that men are harsh rulers. Now, I think a man, because of superiority, he never wanted to be challenged by a woman over that. Perhaps because maybe there was a tendency, or there is a tendency in our African setups, women maybe are products to men. I think that is the reason why some of these tendencies, especially sexual violence, happens in our families. Now a man said, no, as long as you are my wife, you have no reason to challenge me over this simple issue. For him, he regarded it as simple issue. Eventually they fought. After fighting, then the following day, mukasiye watu lana. So 4 things are involved. Economic situation, there's also sexual violence, there's also physical itself, because there was an element of fighting, and eventually divorce. Now, we are talking about mental anguish, mental what, all those ones are causing trauma into somebody's mind. So, some things, as Bugiswe NGO Forum, as an individual and a human rights activist, as a civil society activist, me as Hamza, some of these things, when they happen, we share them with our public bodies. We share them with the authorities. We also identify the problems, perhaps to give some counseling, advice, and so forth. There was an issue in Butiru, by the way, in 2016, no, 2018. I was on a radio talk show. Then somebody called me after hearing Ngandu Kugani Kanamaliri. So a lady called me and said, "No, Hamza, I have heard you have talked about some of these pro bono services that you are willing to provide. But then I can't discuss over this issue on the radio, so I need a private conversation." We set up a meeting. Then this lady meets me. After going to the place, she was telling me, "See, my husband beat me up because of the following. But the case, I reported it to police, and the police has actually tried again to mingle within the same case. Now they are threatening to arrest me. The complainant who did what? Because of money." So I said, okay. I made an appointment. Then we went to Butiru in Manafa. So hole Manafa, Saholayo, na reva DPC. That some the lucky bit of it is that I found actually the same man who had been accused to deny this lady justice and threatening to arrest her, also present. So I showed the reference number. I said, "No, we are following up on this case." So the man said, "You see, at first he was rude, but then I told him, see, you're a police officer, but we know how we can handle you. We can handle you. You're a civil servant. In these laws of this country, you cannot deny somebody justice, especially when some of us are looking on." Now, eventually, the man pulled the lady outside and said, "You see, it is true, your man gave me some little money." Because me, I told him, confess if indeed you have been trying to hide away from such things. Now, eventually, he accepted. And then he said, "Okay, now, it is now upon your discretion as a lady, as a complainant, to decide otherwise. But for me, if you are willing, we can do that." Now, I am picking out cases where we as an organization, we have tried to help our people. Again, there is a research that we did with our code, but I realized in Bunapolo, inga China, Ibuchigai, I was discussing, I went to Bunapolo Primary School. Then I also caused the community meeting there. And so many telling stories emerged. And I realized the reasons why early marriages, early child pregnancies, and school dropouts, some of these cases happen in our communities, but they're also engineered by our parents as well. The parents of these children, once they know say they come out to negotiate for bargain, and then there was also another case in Namanyunyi. In fact, I'm still pushing for that in November Primary School. There was also a case where three candidates in primary 7 in 2019 had been impregnated and there had been babarusa ku isomero babatsa imbuto babayira babarusa ne khunana. Now me I insisted, I said no, let's identify these people and then we show them that indeed we can buy. But you know what people said? You see, we don't want to create enmity in this community. You see, now, even the binonga bikhola mu bitundu byeffe, as organizations, sometimes we have come on board to push and maybe shown these culprits can be handled, maybe threatened by use of law. But again, with our people again inside the tracks, and then he said, you see, abantu bano ni khubalehe lwekhuba bamwele moshinana shishindu. So for me, as Hamza, as on behalf of my organization, we have tried to do just that, especially where cases involving domestic violence have surfaced.
Yeah, wanyanabi Hamza. Bebule bembuka efe ya huwere almost nenga khulini huwa ikhabi babaliyo khukanihira ndi khutsa huwa dakika ndwera tsibili tsyonyene kali mukhuyakhile lwe khubembuka efe ya huwere khulwe khunyalisira tsikamera tsefe atwa ni likono khwitsa bulayi khwandikanile isinanga etse ano khenyoe ni Pastor Tenywa, could you move forward? You are not exceeding 2 minutes.
I want again to take this pleasure to say the Wizards Foundation, we are very grateful. Nga action against vulnerability tuli basanyufu nti tuyitiddwa okubeera wano ate n'ensanyuka okulaba ba honorable nga we bali. Nnyimirira wano bwe ndaba honorable ava e Bududa nsanyuka kubanga Bududa yanfula kyendi. Nakola research Namesi Village Bukala Sub-County in 2011. Ate omukyala yankulembera bali bamuyita Winnie yali kansala. So when I see you there, nsanyuka, because my research is very much grounded in Bududa and for Bududa. Banange action against vulnerability twatandika okuweereza wano mu Mbale mu biseera bya COVID nga emergency fleet ate kati ne tukola ku budaabuda abantu. Kakati bwe twogera ku kigambo kya domestic violence oba butabanguko maka oba ebintu ebifaana bwe bityo, twebaza Wizards Foundation kubanga bagamba nannyini mufu yakwata awawunya. Wizards Foundation mukuta awantu awawunya. COVID eraze bulaze bituli ebiri mu ngeri gye tulwaningamu amaka ejjeeyo ebizibu naye ne byeyongera. Kaakati njagala ba honorable batuyambeko kuba olw'obudde tuyina policies nnyingi naye okuzimplement nga bwe buzibu. Waliwo ekintu ekiyitibwa disaster management, preparedness and management policy. Muyo mulimu akantu wali wansi akagamba nti ku LC sitting bawaayo dakiika for risk analysis. Is that policy existing? Kubanga bannaye nga tugezaako okufuna amagezi ag'okukendeeza obutabanguko mu maka n'obuzibu obuvaawo, abantu bwe mutuula era kati bwe mbuuza nti mu LC sitting zammwe bameka abalina that element obudakiika bwe bawaayo okwogera ku bizibu ebiyinza okuvamu omutawaana, bangi muyinza okuntegeeza nti tekiriiyo. Kaakati ekintu ekyo kikulu nnyo bannaye, njagala bakyogereko kubanga ebintu ebyo bwe mukuŋŋaana ne mulaba nga abaana ababakwata be bangi, parishes eziwera ne zi recording ekintu ekyo ne zitwala ku sub-county disaster management committee. ne bategeera nti parishes bwe ziti zirina obuzibu, awo kyanguwirwa okuyingirwamu ne musala amagezi. Bwe kiva ku sub county ne kigenda ku district, we have a very good structure. Kakati singa ekintu ekyo kibeera implemented, kyalibadde kikendeeza ku bizibu. Kale ssebo.
Wanyana bipasta olw'ebyo byositsana ali ndiyo nibakiramu babiri bonyene nibo nokutsie kubali kusimu nyoba manyise simu babatyaho kupesimu kunyanga ino.
Okay, uyo lukhuba nga arekerese bulafu yo inamba esaniro sirakhuba nga abiraho ili noti musanvu tsine ndwera noti indwera noti indwera fwesi khunaba nga khukanikhila atwela era khunasime basale befe muli khurekeresela khunalondo basale mwanyala ifanu nafe khusilo sila khukanikha tsilomo tsingali kahousa namanyile ndi sha studio Paul arrede khubona ndi akhwakanisa kamasimu kosi akanaba nga niketsa
ngani khusirindi ya tsimu ndiyo ni senior probation and welfare officer we district ye Manafa Esther yitso khukanikhilekho mudaika mbwe khuendwera no khatumisa tsibili ta
protocol observe isi bamayi ni bapapa mwenayo kama sinandi nakhayenze Esther Mugoya senior probation and social welfare officer we Manafa bambele dachikendwera ni shisinza ife Manafa shikhurerere bisayumbo mungo khubanga biyongela butambi ne butambi bwetsile ni bukara namwefe bududa khulanga khuri butoro ni khunywa nge Manafa khuli khuhakakho nabi khubona khuri bamayi khwaba empoweringile khubirira mu program ye wepu bali khufunakho kamapesa balwanisa butambi ne bapapa nibo bali khuna mukhunywa kale isi bakhonarebo befe nakhumanya injali isi munyala wakhuyeta khwabona khuri nga Uganda yositsana khunyala khwabakho ni sawa ye khutandikha khunywa mubyalomo nga Manafa khwahaka khubona khuri sawa tsibenga 10 oba 8 khubona khuri babandu befe batandikha khunywa ne khwatsile khubona khuri kumutikhi saa 2 tsesi umundu alibele nga ali munimila ali khalima oba tuyanga bali munanu mukhunywa khwahakilekho nga ofisi ya RDC yahakakho implementing eboneri ihakakho nabandu babenga shibawuna mukhunywa ta ne shabele nga shiri shangu ta kale isi bakhonarebo befe khubalomba ngabe khunyala khwabakho ni uniform time ye abandu befe khunywa babanga banywa khukholakho kimilimo khulwembuka nga nakhuyila khusima babandu befe bulafu bali khukhurekeresa balebe efene nga khwakhwifakho khubona khuri khulwanisa butambi khubirira mukhuramba nabi imbawo unetsa khulwanisile butambi ta kale wanyala nabi khulwembuka nakhumanya sina kila papa mayika khubele embuka efitiri nadala nga efe khuramba mu direct ni abandu mu community momwo ne hesubile ndi ndio talk shows tsesi khusanga khusomesela khwabandu khutsiredi yebulafu yoke ne khubenga khuyongela khupilisa bandu befe khuramba ni kamani khurumanise butambi niba buli khurera busayombo munana mutsinzi wanyala nabi papa mayika
nasimile nabi Esther ali umukanikhi wa kamayo nga Paul mu studio nali khurengekharenga tsisimu niye umuchirama council Kabibi Sharifa. Yeah, could you move forward? Ndi huku wadaika ndwera. Yeah, video byaolire atenga kwandika ne khulira khunyanga enyene fe khutsira khunyanga.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very sorry I don't know Lugisu. I'm going to use English.
Okay.
First of all, I'll first thank all the participants who have presented. It has been really a very colorful workshop or training. Indeed, it is true. There is an increase, or COVID has impacted, or it has resulted into the increase in domestic violence. One of the ways how COVID has affected is in economic ways. People have been affected, people's businesses have been affected in a negative way. whereby you find parents have nothing to do but to send their children for hawking. I think you've seen young children in towns. Sorry. I think you've seen, everyone can bear witness with me. Young children hawking tomatoes, Irish potatoes. Others are going for stone quarrying in order to make ends meet. Or you find now children are now supporting families. Or children have been turned to be heads of families in supporting their families financially. And this is, it is going to impact, this is very bad. It is child labor. You're exposing the child to harsh conditions outside there. Like in the harsh environment, you don't know what he's going to find in the, where they're doing stone quarrying, or in the process of hawking. You don't know the type of people he's going to meet. At the end of the day, the child will be raped, defiled in such a way, it is affecting our society. We are having a rate. We are anticipating an increase in street children. We are going to face those challenges during this time of COVID. Thank you very much. That is all I had.
Thank you so much. Ali Polo mu studio hakwambaza uli ni babali hulaini hunyanga ino. Iwengo libula fiyo hupire simu ili hulioni ba member wa parliament, hulioni ba kaniki basurekeresire kwabaoni babandi abakali batwelata nasiro ndi isimu ema nambasa andi hubolere simu ama hubabolere simu isi mwahire hubanga bahupaho hubanga hureba birebo byefe tsakhusirebo sisiena huli hukaniha hubya domestic violence namweta bisayo mbamongo ni hufursera abalumba bali Mbale ni mu Elgon area byatsiringa birosera hutsira hu report ya polisi ye kumwiko kwebikano birili 19. Isi muri hukurekesra ali isimu yefe ili inzikule hupire hunyanga ino hureba ababalio ali nga watsire mbabolendi ikoti ya LC humanya niye huliyambi nesiri mundu mutwera siri chairman siri defense balomba linga ili ya LC 1 kwahire hubaho abo bose na bamemba be koti na mweta be council yositsana sikwahire hutamba hoba hazita eranga sibahire huba balehana akhulume kuli babiri bane basesaba ta bahire huba bataru barano musamvu ali chairman niyo halausinge bawo hulehana hakutse sport ya inambe ye huperi noti musamvu tsirano ndwera sesaba musamvu tsinet sesaba tsinet tsirano namwe tsesaba ili 0751674646.
Balio inyange michina kubeti kwakire kubanga kubafunye bali kulaini na nyanga kubanga babawulira bitebo byenyi baza kubanga babawuliza live iri kina mu Purpose Hall ni musobosa kuba kone chesi mubanga mubabolera kunoti musamvu 5 yonyene nkago musamvu nanu mukaga nanu mukaga oni kubita ku Airtel kuba MTN niyo yes connecting yako kale iri kina bita kunoti musamvu 5 yonyene nkaga 7 46 46 osobola kubako nikyeso bateeba wanji Elgon wanji utyo nakwagani okay okay wanyira nabula Anthony ndoza bakulu bakulire baza kubanga bakwiramu okubita ku noti 75 union nkago 7 46 ne kwesikulu kubanga kubita inyangai
hello
wanji
yoga nikaniseni na vitilo kwa National Anthem liwa mayo melare aliponywa alipapa wesawa lisini nenga tena ambase ndiba ikala wakunyana pemba na kiteso so ishirikila itawe
okay wanyala kulukubita ku noti 75 yenyine nkago 7 46 ne kwesibiteso byeffe birikubatira musi gwekyerera guno kina okay gola kwengaganika nawe ku noti 75 yenyine nkaga 7 46 kusobosa kubanga nawe ubigata ko bakuwulire wanji Elgon sorry nabi gobola yiramu kukuba kubenga kubanga kudyana nabe kubenga ganikani bachafe bali kumbale sesi nyanga ikina wanji Elgon sorry gobola network nawo ninyene kalinda ininga gobola kubenga ganikana kinakole kamba aroba masaba yes kuna chafu kwa nyanga nikina okay kuna chafu gundi uli kwa nyanga nikina kunoti 75 yenyine nkago 7 46 niyo neso kuza kubanga obutirako basobosa kubanga bakufuna mu Mbale Assessment Purpose Hall wanji Elgon wanji David
Masi mebaje mbara yote kuja kwa kumeli watu la baba ganyara
wanji
bakamumeli watu la baba ganyara abira ndio baba bala banyanga baje hiyo bali vitu vyao kala bakanya kwa uzibura
baba kwa kale
abo bako kale kuja pesa baso lele kemena ndio tule kumera masi ba kulisaje
okay wanyira na David bukagoye ku Elgon FM kuno timu 75 iyo nyine nkago 7 46 kubenga kuyongera kuna banga tunayo mu ruda na benyanga anakina ko kamba aroba masaba yes Elgon wanji
ikibya dolba da kuri rashe romu gombo ipo
anani
akibya dolba da kuri rashe bibwala
okay
ra masingira bare kunanga basimukira bara basimukira kitu cyo cyambira kuna biba
okay
akibya ikibya dolba da rashe ba MC
ocha uwanya nabi awe no kine kuna banga kwirayo kumbale sesi bakuru befe bayongera kubanga baganikayo ne kubenga kubalira biba kukwiramu alo goga katani mike alo
ya Paulo nambasa nibo abenabo ali khurusakho balebe ngeri olioni sirebo mutwera babiri bonyene niyese khuli khwakamisiraho khukobolesi aba member ba parliament khukalekho mubirebo bisi banyala khukalukhamo ni khukhwakamisa ingani khayino kane mukhuyakhile isimu munyala khuba simulire bulayi nabita nenga yaberewo takhwitsa bulayi nabita yitsakho ebweni ngo kana ulioni sirebo shekhureba nga aliyo wekhabili nayetse ndi khukana babiri bonyene bola kamasina ko
nasimile nabi abinyaire huwawona mwesi kamasina kanga bali DJ Choice bakali bamanyiwa Julius. So my question is very simple is eliyo bashefe bahali anota bahainaho yade simu yade smartphones yade radio bahole bariye na humanya ndi Wizard Foundation na yeru
wanyanabi wenano
ise bananga bari lufutu nabira mubwimbi sinyoerera lengana khureba ndi kumusomo kwese khusoma kuno kutabulakho ni barangirisi befe isi bakanibwa mumitala isi khwamileyo namweta kirende ebire sirebo sino ibulafu yesinama waliwo egombololo bakilanga bari yebumbo waliwo kumusango kwa defilement kukwabibwa kumusango kuno nga kwabibwa actually yabere mwesi kukwa weloko nga baabire kumusango kuno mwabamo omwana omukhana umwana yuno aba wekimiko 15 aba ali musiniya fwana inyowa umwana mukhana yuno baba bamuwesisa ari nga bawesisile umwana mukhana yuno basali bomwana omusoreri banyowa basibonanga sekhangu batima bamitinga LC beabira ari nga bamalire okhwiyabira LC walanga basali bomwana omukhana nga walangire basali bomwana omukhana LC sisiyangisa niyo wanjula ni kumusango amala abaloma aringa khukanika khulomo tsino ndi khukana khutsikwalasirano tsiwerawo ife nga abandu abasomilekho kamakambira khwamanya khuri kumusango oko iba defilement oba aggravated oba sina kuli ni khutya paka mukoti sisiyangisa LC court niyo iyekhasa mumusango oko bakhalila umwana manya lubeka lw'omwana omusoreri babakhalila milioni mbotsinga bafukirisana arikira obona khende basirebo sirindi kumusomo okuku kamukhulekela muri kwakamana ano namwe khuna kwongelakho ni musyalo bayelosi mukoti tsefwe tse mubyalo etse tsino bamanye bari kimisango ngeke bali ni khukifuadinga tsaka
wanyala nabi khanilemo yuno khumanya iliyo tsinzira tsingali tse khumanyisamo abandu nesunyala warambisa tsiosi tsana ta aliyo babandi ndela khulila khu radio alomali nimukhwitsemo sisili syangu ta nga watsile khulekhanisa kimikhosi tsiosi tsana khwasifumbula khuli radio niyo ifurisa khukhola khu bandu khufurisa umundu nanakenda khukhwama buli musinza khukhola musinza kale sikhunyala khwola khu buli mundu 100% tane nga khubona khuli khwatumisile mu 50% awo khubanga khwa communicating khukhakobole busa khubalayisa khumusomo nga kuno imbuka yefe nga ninomile yatsile nandikanile mukhwakamayo bamemba ba parliament befe babeyo ni tsilomo fiti tsiri nga ni khwakamisa
khunyala khwanyowa ni papa masika fiti busakha tse sunyala wangela khubala khukhurekeresa ebulafu yakhukobola esima yabe nga amalizile
abebulebe nambasa khwawulile bikali silomo tsindayi nabi musisera sifwiti akhaba nga sisera sili sikali nenga bindu byabele bilayi bimala imbuka mundu mutwele ngo omulebe wamakhukanikha amukhe awama khwama khumusindalo watsiyanga areba kimisango kino bayerosi bakiambilamu polisi yakiambilamu yatandikha khukhala kimisango nga busili yekilanga ekoti yabwe yekhulya bino khwabimanya khuli biliyo ne abe nga omukosi matiwa namakhuloma amini katami khali andi khutsila tsakilenga babandu befwe khubakho ni lesoni isomisa kamasomo kano oba esawa andwela oba dakika kataru basomisa khwa bandu mu primary baba bali khunywa abo nao babakho ni libale lyekhuramo nga bemba kimyenya bawulira baba nga bawulira nga covid yawelewo bibanga mukhatale kimisindalo kiliyo kibanga kikanikhakho bindu bino kwegamba community ibe nga iba sensitize oba yaba aware khu bindu bitsya mumoni nenga baambira omwana w'omukhana bakhamufunyakilisirawo busata umusololi bakule amala omwana omukhana baboza khuba doctor wekumukamba engineer bamwirirewo busata nolwekyo bebulebe khwabonanga ife ba members of parliament kamakambira kano kaba implemented oba kabe khukaminilisa khubone khuli kabawo karambe khu bandu umundu abekho nga example musyalo oba siye khubonerakho bamubwe ekimyakha kisi baloma ekyo bamumine bulayi bubwene abandi babenga babonera khusindu kino khubone khuli kamakambira kefwe karamba mwanya nabe khumbulilisa
kuka khwasima lukalanyila khubanga khegatilekho maye hayinza
mwanyala nabi era barekere sini participating in program ino husima era nge region nga ne holotengo ikana hamanya statistics iri metsindai especially alwande a sexual violence hukobole tsingo tsefe ne hufura isi basali huni kuli mukumkali nabi hubonanga sensitizing abana befe bahana abe hal of course basenge babanga babayengeginga hu sexual education kwegamba nga niba babana bahana nga ni hutsowanga ni batsowa baba hulekera shino humya hange chu hayengeginga ni basani so nsabeni basali basenge bamayi hukobole huroli efeyo kubenga kusensitizing abana befe kufura abana bahana batsowenga nawo bewashitibwa batsowenga bamanya bali bebuvunanzi bweburangisiyo lukala bahombisombisibwa ni basani bana bakana ho bayengeginga ababenga babo next future ne shehabiri kensabe bapapa bali bulafiyo mu discussions on bali papa na batulugunyizibwa nese bamyo bakani hata so kwalo mhamye huringenga bamasaba ero musanara mo musani urama culturally pressing culture pressing so high kwegamba ni biri wabo minisibwa nenga so amewa kan hata so government i protecting abahasi bamayi babana festa ni bapapa so papa mhasirenge mwami nhirenge yo ni hwame hubenga kan ha hunsongeti hubone huru hungona i region efe hungone buchisu era humanya huri kamagambira kali khasira busenge nga huru experiencing domestic violence ta mwanya la horekereza
khwasima lokale bali bana khupakira kho bakene befe mukono mubene nyamuyo khupakira mukono mwanya la khwitsa inakane mukosi bwayo kumuzindalo khubone shinyina shabanga nishirira khabweni
ya nga khusiri khwikalira era kane mayi khwikalira olundi hemba birakiremo mubino tsikoti tsa LC ngani tsombehebwaho ikoti ya LC iye khusyalo namwe khumulukha ili ni khubaho abo bositsana barangitsi khukhahobo khesisyalo namwe khekumulukha ikoti ye Sirimba division namwe gombolola ili ni khubaho babandu barano barobolebwa ni bukhobo bwabwe burangirisi bekhukoti tse Sirimba division namwe gombolola bakhile khuba barano nga bakhasi babili bali khubwenokho khukhwikhasa ikoti ya LC yakhile khukhasibwa musifo syesisinzesyo khukhwangwisa khukaya chairperson we koti niye urangirira nenga saliyo ta vice chairperson wasikhola ikoti ya LC ili ni khubonanga yikhasibwa buli isi kumusango kubawo khukurambakho khangu bamemba benga nibo bakhile khubawo khunyalisira ikoti khubawo isi balanga quorum nga khusyalo namwe khumulukha ikana bamemba barano nga khulikho ni bakhasi babili ni nasitolongo khubwenokho khubawo no ikoti yikhasibwe nga sibali baryo ikoti iyo ukhakisamo lukosi ta iye Sirimba khu division namwe khugombolola bamemba bakhile khuba bataru nga khulikho umukhasi atwera ni nasitolongo bamemba babakanibwa bakhile khubawo inyanga yositsana iye khukaya khwe ikoti sili bali yuno ikhalemo atsunukhe mwarure bulafu ta kasi arure bulafu ikoti iyo iba sisili ikoti ta nga mutwera khuba memba babakanibwa ikoti khukhwikhala khubawo warurire ibulafu kumusango kwakhile khukona namwe khusendesebwa khukhwolesa nga bamemba bali bositsana buli ilomo yositsana ererebwa mukoti ya LC ili ni khukhalibirawo mukhukwangwana syakhile khunyowa khufukilisana mukwangwana nenga syakhasibile nomusyendiseyo mwile khupolisi ari nga bukokha bwalekhani khakhulomi khuli bamemba bali barano ne babili bakwa khuluwande babandi khuluwande olundi chairperson urangirire ikoti khakokha khewe nikho khakhalawo khukhalawo khwe ikoti khulikho ni chairperson bamemba babawo bositsana bunyala bwe ikoti akhali khukhandakilya bunyala bubundi ikoti ya LC inyala khulakila sitwela namwe khubino khubawo khukhwiyakhilana khukhalawo sye khukholikha khuwandila khukhwisilawo kamapesi khukhwibiyisa singa omundu webiyisa waloma ati nakhola sino ni munsi yakhile kasaba kwangwana mbawo bubi ta khuwamba namwe khukulisa isindu syomundu lulomo lwekoti byebukayi mukoti biba mululomo lwekoti lulomo lwesi babandu abafurisa bakali musisinzesyo bakanikha nga yaberewo ukhamanya lulomo lwekoti yesisinzesyo kane ikoti imufunire umukalusiramo ne byekhukhebulira namwe records bibyamire mumusango byakhile khuronebwa muluzungu isi byakhile khuronebwa ibyo biyamba khu byekoti hafukisa chairman namwe defense namwe bandu babili bonyene namwe mbo bali nanu yosi bekoti talwe khubandi kamakambira kakabumbawo ikoti ya LC kaloma kali bakhile khuba babandu nga namakhuloba ninesyo mayi khwakhusimile nabi papa khwakhusimile nabi khulangile bakali nenyo babili bewefe mwesa khwabasimile lukali nabi era ise nandilombile ngefukisa ni babalyo bositsa nandi bibili ukhwitsa ebweni khali bababelele bilayi ali ni abwenawo woman member of parliament webududa Justin Hines khumusima lukali era ndi khukhulomba mayi ukhwikalilewo kumusomo kwefe kuno
awanyala nabi papa ni participants mwesitsana era mbasima mbasaba inhe khube ba ambassador messages khufunire ano nafenga hakobole mu community stefe lukala waliyo bantu bali experiencing violence domestic violence ne bakhumanye khutsa bakhafune lisomali kali nabi songa khwakobole baliko waliyo LC courts waliyo magistrates courts waliyo safe home na home states bakani hilo hetso ni bindi so that least umuntu abo ni wide choice so simbalomba lisomeza khamafunano shalero lihakamano ta era nisi basa namanyire time ino khulingo ni babana time inzibu nabi ne babana bano he khuba engaging mumili muchesi khuba khwika mutsingo ngabe maye hute ho mwana hate heni nawe mufumbiro eke huwara ngabe khutsa khulima khunyu henge family kubanga corona ngaba affecting ekimili muchefe chesi khuramba ko mutsi office ne burambi ngabwe khulima ngo khuyongere khulima bamasaba khuli balimi khulima emwanyi khulima kamatore khuyongere mu khulima so that keeping babana bano mu holiday babe busy ataba khubere ni shimi the closest uba keeping a close isura boranga na already singo ni na connection tawe ni community libulafio yari yaba hostile ni huba ingwera huba sensitizing amanya rights tabwe iramanye bali abantu be kumuwendo nabi bekane kasomuna amanya induwe kumuwendo na evaluing bale benga khumalirisa kengani ho message alwanda corona ali real corona aliwo iranga bama especially hulwane Kenya hubone khuri khuchunga nabi in fact right now community infections ziri tsingali ngebudude sinama khubonanga lisibunaho funo tsinamba tya abantu bali ni corona so nabalombire ini ngakubala katsingo tsefe khulonderere standard operating procedures ha ministry of health hondere message ya president alwanda corona ngahora msatsi maski huboni social distance husabe mungono khurame bala mu corona ali mu community ne hwika humenya ni naye so khuramenga ho observe nkamagambira karere mu ba ministry of health ni president hubone khurama bala mu mwanyala hurekereza
wanyala mai balebe ninanye khubasima na mwanyala kwitsa khwarekikire osie kumusi sili mukongeyo khale sitsire khale syalindirire kane khufukitse buli mundu yesi twitsire anyalise khuwamba ne kane khunyoe ni bakeni befe ni babananywa khufunakho syekhulya ali nafwe khuramire khutsie khuri mwanyala nabi